Okay guys, here's a hot take that I've developed since becoming the parent of a human child. Dogs and cats are not your babies. You did not create them. You purchased them or adopted them, and now you own them. And if you want to compare that to a type of human relationship, I could give you one, but it's not going to be parenting. Now, this isn't me making up a type of person to be mad at, because 3/4 of child-free dog and cat owners view themselves as parents, which explains all the pets in strollers. And this thing happens sometimes where I'm walking my kid in a stroller and I see another person come with a stroller and I'm ready to do the eye contact thing of like, hey, look at us. And then I walk by and they see my gorgeous human child and I look and I see an animal. Not a human child, just an animal. And it's like stolen valor. Now, I've been a dog lover since I was born, and I fully support your right to bear pets. But things are honestly starting to feel a little bit out of hand.
I would watch cities burn for you. I would start genocides for you. I would take a bullet for you, and you don't even have to ask.
Take the fact that from the year 2000 to 2017, the dog population exploded from 68 million dogs to 90 million, which outpaced human population growth. And the economic implications were massive. In 1998, Americans spent $23 billion on their pets. By 2022, that number was $137 billion. In the current pet economy, every human luxury is available for your furry best friend. And it's also taken over social media, with over 1/3 of pet owners creating accounts for their beloved companions. Shout out to my boy Freddy the wine dog. Now, this might sound harmless. Who cares if some yuppies blow their retirement on pet accessories?
Cashmere sweaters for pets are the epitome of warmth and style.
But underneath the dog sweaters and cat cafes is something more insidious, an obsession with parenting as the ultimate goal of our existence. And the logic behind this obsession isn't all that different from the growing natalism movement, in which Americans are being aggressively encouraged to have ever more kids. It's also contributing to a weird type of dehumanization, in which our love of pets allows us to disregard human beings that we don't particularly care for. And just a heads up, we're going to cover a lot today, but we're not going to dive into the morality of owning pets, as that's its own can of worms. We're going to explain all of this in this video, but first, I want to talk about how we ended up so obsessed with animals that live in our houses, but definitely aren't a type of, domestic servant. Now, humans have long coexisted with animals, usually in roles of interdependence, with us relying on them for hunting, herding, or catching mice. But according to art historian John Berger, pet ownership changed with industrialization. As an influx of urbanites became estranged from nature, industrialization brought an explosion of animal-themed commercial products, including the lifelike stuffed animal. Meanwhile, a boom in animal-themed forms of popular entertainment like zoos, circuses, and dog shows fulfilled that deep human need to connect to animals at a time when nature was becoming less accessible. Such imagery, in Berger's view, increased interest in acquiring domesticated pets to be kept for companionship rather than utility. And starting amongst the Victorian elite, it trickled down to the middle class, where pets were seen as representing important domestic values like kindness and empathy. I think this is the one time the trickle-down theory actually worked. Animals became the stars of pop culture. Some of the earliest silent films featured cats, and Disney's anthropomorphized animals sustained America through some pretty tough decades. And no animal was more iconic than Lassie, whose popularity spurred many boomers to whine until their parents would take them to go adopt a dog. The prosperity of the post-war years ushered in the true beginning of Pet Nation as adoptions spiked. But these pets weren't the spoiled little children that they are today. Dogs largely lived outside, chained to dog houses, and cats, they just got to roam around freely, killing birds for fun because they're sociopaths. Pets weren't considered family members so much as slightly dirty, furry tag-alongs. But the second half of the 20th century set the stage for our current love affair with pets. For sociologist Andrea Lawrence Simpson, the 60s and 70s ushered in some seismic shifts to families. Stuff like declining birth rates, increasing divorce rates, cohabitation without marriage, and distancing of extended family, all of which she says aided the destruction of social and familial ties and created a sense of unease and anxiety in the family sphere. She writes, lost in such rapid familial change, people actively searched for some semblance of stability and security in their daily lives. Ultimately, pets became surrogates for love and companionship because they provided enduring social ties, loyalty, and mutual dependency that were no longer as accessible. Today, 97% of pet owners consider their pets to be family, and half consider them just as much a family member as any human. Shout it out in the comments if you feel like your parent loves a pet more than they love you. I know that might be like a dark thing to think about, but I'm just curious if that's the case. 81% of pet owners buy their dogs holiday gifts, and 73% of female millennial pet owners let their pet sleep in their bed, while 30% of male millennial pet owners throw their pets birthday parties. Oh, this all sounds pretty fun. For most of history, people didn't burn money on pet accessories because there honestly wasn't really a market for pet accessories. You know, kitty litter wasn't invented until after World War II, and mass-produced dog toys didn't exist until the 50s. But according to scholar Catherine C. Greer, starting in the 1980s, consumer culture surrounding pets exploded. And today, spoiling your pets is apparently part and parcel with seeing them as family. 46% of pet owners say they spend as much on their pet's health care as they do on their own. During the Great Recession, as people clamped down on household expenses, spending on pets nonetheless rose 28%. And despite inflation during February 2024, weekly sales of pet care products were growing 3 times faster than any other category of consumer goods. There's also a growing market of health tech products for pets. You know, you got litter boxes that track the frequency and weight of your cat's dumps. You get collars that monitor vital signs and trackers that send health alerts if your pet increases licking or scratching. You know, there's also another type of tracker for that. It's called you just look at them. You look at your pet, and if they lick and scratch more, you say to yourself, looks like he's licking and scratching more. And then you go from there. And that's to say nothing of the premium pet food space, because these days your pet can eat a lot more organically and healthy than you can. So is all of this societal and economic change solely motivated by the fact that dogs and cats are often cute as hell? Or is there something deeper going on here? You know, put differently, what does the pet parent trend say about our underlying beliefs and values? Well, for Lawrence Simpson, the pet parent identity is inextricable from America's pro-natalist culture, which is the underlying value system by which childbearing is a moral objective for humans. Stigmatization against folks who don't have children, especially women, remains profound, even today.
Now, where are my grandchildren?
As Lawrence Simpson writes, the status of parent in the United States is an important one for most people, and the transition to that status is a highly significant role transition during the life course. And at a time when everything from economic anxiety to climate despair is leading millennials to rethink having children, pets offer the chance to learn a caregiving role and express affection. For those who aren't parents, letting their pet assume the role of child creates a protective social barrier and allows the legitimate performance of parent regardless of judgment, according to Lawrence Simpson. For child-free individuals or couples, having a pet can be a means of achieving legitimate family status. Now, there's certainly no small amount of stigma directed towards people who value their pets as children, whether they're human child-free by choice or not.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies.
But the pushback against Vance's comments, which he actually walked back, which is unique for him.
And yes, I made a sarcastic comment years ago.
Suggests an increasing cultural consensus that animals are able to fulfill the role of the child. What's more, treating your pet with the attention you'd afford a child might even be culturally expected. You know, these ideals are, of course, still gendered. As Lawrence Simpson writes, performing mother to a pet can help a woman to feel as if she has satisfied social expectation. And we can't talk about performing the role of pet parent without talking about the digital side of this identity, in which sharing pictures of your cat quickly turned into aspirations for lucrative monetization opportunities. In her book, The Internet is for Cats, journalist Jessica Maddox argues that pet ownership, like any form of identity, is ripe for commodification under neoliberalism, as sharing pet pictures on Instagram can cement one's pet-owning identity into a personal brand. Now, in the process, the pet becomes part of what business scholar Russell Belk calls the extended self, meaning the individual plus the other people, places, things, or pets that constitute their sense of being. In a world where on average dog owners post about their pups 6 times a week, the pet becomes a valuable tool in increasing the pet owner's social capital. As Maddox puts it, animals and social media content creation are the 21st century equivalent of a farmer using a horse to plow the fields. And to be clear, this is all more structural than it is personal. So don't get mad at me, pet owners. I wish I was a pet owner. And just as my landlord says we can't have a dog because he likes the floors in the apartment a lot, and the dog would, I guess, ruin the floors. But what he doesn't know is my daughter just uses crayons and markers now and just draws all over the floors, and I can't keep track of that, you know? So what would you rather have, landlord? Sharing images of your perfectly fluffy baby boy is a natural reaction to the demands of the attention economy, which encourages us to self-surveil in order to make ourselves more likely to attract eyeballs. And cute pets are an easy way to attract attention. As Maddox writes, cute aesthetics may prompt sociality, making cuteness an ideal form of socially mediated communication. In other words, seeing something cute prompts emotional responses like, ooh, I just want to squeeze it. And these emotional responses are inherently pro-social, likely to lead to the type of engagement that our souls all crave. As Maddox writes, cuteness is not exempt from neoliberalism. Under neoliberalism, almost everything has the potential to become labor, and people try to succeed in profoundly individualistic ways. As the digital world slowly becomes the real world, marketing our pets becomes an essential part of being a pet parent and building social capital. Designer dogs reflect the logical extension of this mentality in which pets become items of conspicuous consumption, with the end goal of conveying status. Demand for these dogs also leads to selective breeding to emphasize features that wealthy consumers find desirable, despite the well-documented health risk associated. Now, it can't be a coincidence that over the course of social media's intensification from 2012 to 2023, demand for French bulldogs grew more than 1,000%, eventually making it the most popular dog in America and not coincidentally the most Instagrammable. But even non-designer pets wield power on the internet because animals can't fake it for the camera. You know, their actions in photos and videos are gonna seem really authentic. And sure, your dog is not sticking out their tongue to rake in likes.
Cheers. Good boy.
But when you get to choose between 50 different shots of them and then add a filter, the effect is just as carefully curated as that new thing where people post pictures of their refrigerators and they're all well organized. And it's just like, there's no way you eat if your fridge looks like that. Are you telling me that when you're really hungry, you take stuff out of the fridge and then you put it back together that same way? I don't buy it. In this way, pets further obscure the already hidden labor of social media, while adding an air of carefree authenticity to your ever important brand identity. And we can see this as part of the way that, as Burger notes, pets are co-opted into the family and into the spectacle. And the spectacle of contemporary pet ownership, as depicted on platforms, is a competitive one that encourages ever more consumption. Like if I see my boy Freddy eating really healthy, fancy dog food, then I'm gonna think, oh my God, my dog has to eat that sort of dog food as well, or I'm a bad parent and I don't care about my dog. Scholar Alison Page, in her study of lolcats, argues that cute animal videos operate as a form of what I term cruel relief, a tool for coping with not just the drudgery of work and office life, but also the devastations of neoliberalism and its attendant social and political effect. And this all seems fine until you consider how it's weaponized. In her visit to PetCon, Maddox reports that the convention's founder, Lonnie Edwards, said, "Pets have taken center stage in influence. You get all the benefits of the human influencer with the cuteness of pets. Everyone loves pets. They're joyful, they're cute, they make us happy, but they're not going to get drunk at a party and hurt your brand like a human influencer." Well, Edwards, fun fact, Lassie was a huge drunk and he was always off that brown liquor. And then when he did, he got really racist. Everyone on set knew that when Lassie had a little bit of his brown potion, he was going to say some stuff that was problematic even by 1950s and 60s standards. Think about that. The cuteness and innocence of famous pets, fueled by their apparent helplessness, is disarming enough to lower our defenses. Maddox contends the turning toward pets is indicative of the larger non-human turn in influence and cites the rise of virtual influencers. And now we get AI influencers in the mix, so that's cool.
Boston lobster is probably over 100 years old and will feed my poor village for generations to come.
Maddox argues that the tandem growth of pet influencing and non-real human influencers suggests that risky humans can no longer necessarily be trusted. It's a point that the old milkshake duck joke subverts. It's almost impossible to find a human who goes viral and doesn't have a problematic past. And it brings to mind a question posed by philosopher Ludwig Wittgenstein. Why do dogs feel fear but not remorse? His answer? Because they can't talk. The comparative simplicity of pets makes them especially inoffensive influencers, while using them in this way leverages our innate human need to connect with animals. At this point, it's worth saying that we definitely do not think that owning pets is bad. You know, humans have coexisted with animals for thousands of years, and pets have been shown to have a positive effect on our physical and mental health. One study estimates that pet ownership causes $11 billion in savings for the American healthcare system. Others document benefits to everyone from cancer patients to senior citizens, from veterans to children with autism. And it's not just the humans that benefit, as the oxytocin levels in dogs have been shown to increase significantly after just 3 minutes with their owner. But it still seems like for most of us, pet ownership isn't primarily a matter of getting our 10,000 steps a day, even if that is a nice side effect. To understand why, let's return to the bad old 1970s when Lawrence Simpson argues another factor that encouraged the wide adoption of pets was a need for a moral identity. As awareness about environmental degradation increased, people grappled with their own contributions to the destruction of nature. Providing shelter, food, attention, and toys for a dog or cat felt like an accessible way to feel morally redeemed for past social ills that had been cast on the animal world. Now, if the Industrial Revolution and associated commercial imagery of animals left people wanting for the animal company they once had back on the farm, well, the post-Fordist turn left people wanting animal company to make up for industry's destruction of the environment. A misanthropic sentiment brewed about the harms done to the earth in pursuit of human progress. And the modernist sentiment of humans as innately good dissipated, to be replaced by the almost deified goodness of the humble pet. Now, as Lawrence Simpson writes, the animals who would heal the moral wounds of modernity would eventually be afforded luxuries that only the surpluses of industrialization could have produced and the emotional ills of post-modernity could have spawned. Or scholar Adrian Franklin put it in 1999, as America teetered on the edge of the true pet explosion, animals provide a clear, unambiguous feel-good factor in people's lives and an object for human responsibility. Humans began to build social and emotional ties with animals because it had become increasingly difficult for them to establish and maintain such ties among themselves. He argues that this phenomenon led to the increased anthropomorphism of pets, which he says revved up in earnest in the 1980s. Anthropomorphizing means that you attribute human characteristics to non-human entities. Like if you were like, oh my god, my dog is so random, or my cat is so ironic. They are neither of those things. Concurrently, the pet industry taught owners to adopt consumption habits that were more about pleasing the owner than improving the pet's quality of life. By 2018, scholar Sharon L. Forbes argued that seeing pets as family members, purchasing goods that don't respond to their biological needs, stuff like jewelry and breath freshening foods and coat dyes, and even gift giving, all imply intense anthropomorphizing. Meaning that we're sort of doing human things to the dog. The dog doesn't want human things. It wants a nice walk, some snacks, a couple pets here and there, a little good boy every now and then. And we see this in the popularity of the French Bulldog. Dog cognition expert Alexandra Horowitz notes that we've bred them to look more like us. If you can think of celebrities that look like a French Bulldog, let us know in the comments. Now, it doesn't seem coincidental that the most popular dog would be distinctly humanoid, even as breeding for those features contributes to their poor health and suffering. We see this logic at its most extreme in the recent documentary show Chimp Crazy, where chimp moms defy natural and federal laws, raising their pets like human children. Of course, chimpanzees are not humans, and when they grow too large and dangerous to take baths with your human child, well, then they're often confined to miserable conditions that seemed to tempt outrageous tragedy.
Travis attacked Charla Nash on February 16th. She lost her hands, nose, lips, and eyelids in the attack.
But you're probably not a chimp mom, and if you are, what are you doing? Stop. So who cares if you treat your dog like a human, right? Wouldn't that just make you more caring and empathetic? Well, according to a 2021 study, it's actually making you less empathetic, at least to some other humans. Now, researchers found that folks who ascribed more moral worth to pets than to marginalized humans do so by anthropomorphizing animals and dehumanizing humans. So caring more about our pets can make us care less about our struggling neighbors. And we see this in folks who feel empathy for an unhoused person's dog, but not the unhoused person themselves. According to one resident who reported a dog that belonged to an unhoused person, she apparently can't care for herself properly, so how can she care for an animal? And this article was notably absent of concerns about the welfare of the human beings who were also living on the street. In fact, the increased anthropomorphizing of pets on individual and societal levels led scholar Lynette M. Parker to argue that many dogs have effectively received greater recognition of their personhood than Black Americans, writing, "There is evidence that dogs have more easily earned whiteness and are allowed to enjoy benefits as human." She goes on, "Whiteness reaches across species to include and humanize dogs, as dogs are granted access to spaces once forbidden to them. Spaces still exclusionary for blacks. But while all dogs go to heaven, not all dogs get to be coded as white." A discourse about pit bulls and Rottweilers, historically used to guard the homes of Black and brown Americans in inner cities, paints these breeds in racialized terms. And breed-specific laws code these dogs as explicitly violent and attribute more blame to their owners for things like biting. But in many cases, pets are treated with more empathy than marginalized people are in America. And while we see pets in increasingly human terms, less beloved humans are seen in increasingly animal terms. And we saw this very glaringly during the Trump campaign.
Democrats say, please don't call them animals. They're humans. I said, no, they're not humans. They're not humans. They're animals.
An especially insidious version of this sort of dehumanization came when J.D. Vance spread a racist rumor that Haitian immigrants in Ohio were eating their pets.
There's no evidence. A video came out of a migrant 30 miles away eating a cat.
Which of course led to outrage, as for a lot of Americans, nothing is more sacred than a pet, and nothing is less sacred than a group of dehumanized humans. And this brings us back to pronatalism, in which political figures, often on the right, use the importance of the family to implicitly or explicitly emphasize the need for more white babies to offset the dangerous and often inhuman migrant others.
Biden administration has, from the very beginning, used immigration to change the demographic mix of our country.
And in this way, the moral imperative of creating humans often carries an undertone of dehumanization for certain folks. The common sense logic of having kids is good actually conceals the motivation of doing this to make sure there's more of us than them. And while pet owners might think that they're subverting the logic of natalism by opting to be cat daddies and dog mommies, they're in many ways replicating the structures of natalism. Now, as we've seen, pet ownership often follows the logic that parenthood is the ultimate moral goal of human life. This is alongside social media trends that turn our pets into digital commodities and aesthetic preferences leading to the selective breeding of dogs that look super cute even if they can't breathe well. And again, to be clear, we are not saying that you are a bad person for owning a pet. In fact, as I've said before, I'm always down for dog pictures if you just want to slide into the DMs, especially if they're Aussie Shepherds. But much like folks having children don't often stop to think about the ugliness underlying the modern natalism discourse, modern pet ownership is more complicated than just adopting your new best friend. And while this doesn't mean that we all need to drive our dogs to a nice farm upstate, it does mean we should keep our eyes open to see how the joys of pet ownership can be co-opted by much less joyful systems. But please let me know what you think about all of this in the comments. A huge shout out to all of our patrons. There's a link in the description if you want to join our Patreon community. You get videos early with no ads and some extra perks. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do that. Leave a comment, maybe ring the bell so you know when our videos are coming. And in the meantime, say hi to your pets for me.